Hi, I'm Gareth.
Hi, I'm Jackie. We are Vegan FTA. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of our series, Activist.
Today we have the wonderful Bob Isaacson from the Buddhist animal rights organisation Dharma Voices for Animals.
When the Buddha taught us to abstain from taking life, he didn't make an exception for the animals that we like to eat. Or did he? While many Buddhists still eat meat today, Bob argues that they shouldn't, and works tirelessly to change the minds and perceptions of millions around the world.
Bob is doing some absolutely brilliant work through Buddhism, but for some of our viewers out there, we understand you may be of no faith, different faith, whatever takes your fancy. We really hope that you can learn something from this, and we try to tailor this episode to be as inclusive as possible and really have something that can help any activist regardless of faith or feeling on the matter. So we really hope you enjoy this episode and can learn a lot from it. Thank you so much for joining us today, Bob. For all our viewers out and around the world, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I live here in San Diego County, California, just southern Illinois, not far from the Mexican border. And I had a long and very rewarding career in human rights, civil rights defense. So this is what I did. I was an attorney for many years, mostly in Chicago, but also out here in San Diego. And my specialty was defending people against the death penalty. Death penalty is used a lot in the United States, and it was used a lot in Chicago and also in California. So that's what I did for a number of years. I started out, of course, on smaller cases, but for a good 20 years, I was representing people either on death row or in the trial courts in front of juries in Chicago and San Diego. And then I came to Buddhist meditation and Buddhism, actually when I moved out here to San Diego. And I decided to kind of shift away from law. And I went on a lot of meditation retreats, started out weekend and a week, 10 days, and I moved on to retreats a month or longer. So I've done, if you put them all together, 3 to 4 years on silent meditation, Buddhist meditation retreats. I work with some of the top teachers, some Asian teachers and some Western teachers taught in Asia. And then maybe about, so a while ago, it's almost 20 years ago. So I'd already been practicing Buddhism or practicing the Dharma for a number of years. And I always assumed that Buddhists were at least vegetarian. And then one day here in California, there was a really well-known Western Dharma teacher. So Dharma is the teachings of the Buddha. A Western Dharma teacher who was staying with us here in San Diego County because he was giving teachings in San Diego. We went out to buy some lunch. It was my responsibility to buy lunch for him that he would eat during one of his 2-day performances. And so we went to a local food store, and there were salads. He wanted a salad. So I picked the one, it was a salad with grilled veggies, and he picked the one with grilled chicken. And I said to him, that one has chicken, thinking he'd say, oh, then put it back. And he said, I know. And that's where everything changed for me. I mean, it was amazing that I didn't know this. And I'd read the teachings, I was practicing. The centers where I was practicing were all vegetarian. They weren't vegan, but you could still get vegan food. And I couldn't believe it. And I started looking around more carefully, and I found that many, if not most, of the teachers, the Western teachers, were not vegetarian, let alone vegan. A number of years after that, so maybe about, 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago, I was talking to some friends, Patty, Kim, David, and myself. And we were 4 vegans in the Buddhist community here in California. And we decided we needed to start an organization because in between the time that I found out that a lot of these Western teachers were not were eating animals, and when we decided to start an organization, I spent a lot of time talking to teachers one-on-one. Saying, can we have a conversation about this? And I just ask questions. And for most of them, it was okay. We could talk about it. I don't know that I persuaded anyone. And then about 2 or 3 of them were actually really ticked off that I was talking to them about this. It's not something they were comfortable talking about. And then that led to my understanding that we needed an organization. So that was the birth of Dharma Voices for Animals in 2011. So I'm also a lay Buddhist teacher, a lay Dharma teacher. I've been doing that for 12 or 13 years, practicing for 25 years. About halfway through, I've been trained at the largest Buddhist center in the Western world, a place called Spirit Rock in Northern California. So that's where my main teacher is and the teachers I've been working with. So that's how we got to DVA, and we've been growing ever since. We thought actually it would be a small organization, thought we'd be in California. There's a big center out here. 50,000 people come every year. And then not long into it, I realized that we could save so many more animals. So we went to Asia, where almost 99% of the Buddhists in the world live. So that's how DVA began.
Oh, wow.
It's fantastic. And, like you say, we always think that veganism and Buddhism must go hand in hand, because I found that years ago when I very first became interested in Buddhism, and I wanted to go on retreats, but I was a solo mom. I was, raising two children, and I got in touch with the center, and I said, I really want to do these retreats, but I can't become a Buddhist. And they said, well, that's fine. All you need to do to live like a Buddhist is basically be kind to everything. Just be kind to everything. And I thought, well, that's fine. I can do that. I can be kind to everything. And I automatically thought that must mean being vegan. And it's so wonderful to have you on here today, because one of the questions that we see all the time in vegan groups is, why isn't the Dalai Lama vegan? So, it's just so wonderful what you're doing. You've been fighting for all sentient beings' lives, human and non-human now for years. What was it? You obviously made the connection between not harming anything a lot more than other Dharma practitioners. So for you, it must have come quite a long time ago. What was it that led you to become vegan?
Yeah, so I was vegetarian for quite a while, and never, just turned away from the reality of, what happens when one drinks milk, and what happens to the cows and the calves, and also eggs. And I started thinking about it a couple years. So I switched to vegan 2004, so 16 years ago. And it was really, what it was? It's actually an interesting story. I was at a long retreat in Massachusetts on the East Coast of the U.S. And someone was on the same retreat. I spent 6 weeks on the retreat, and he spent 3 months. You could either do full 3 months or 6 weeks. And I happened to sit next to him on the shuttle on the way from the center to the airport. It's like a 90-minute drive to the Boston airport. And so he had a captive audience. And he was asking me questions like, what about the cows? What about the chickens? And I had nowhere else to go. And by the time I arrived at the Boston airport, that was it. I knew I had to make a shift, and that was it. And so I haven't looked back since. And I realized that my activism has really picked up a bit, 2 or 3 notches since I made that move. But at DVA, what we're doing, we're trying to be diverse in opinion also. Some of the people who help us out are vegetarian, and they're not quite there. And I try to remind myself, this is my path also. And so, and then we have some people that are just kind of 50% of the time that are involved. Not our leadership. Our leadership is almost 100%, 99% vegan. But we want to be open. Otherwise, we're not going to persuade anyone. But it's I'm very happy, and my life is so much better since I became vegan 16 years ago.
That's absolutely brilliant. I love that. And especially in this current world, we're trying to advocate for more communal sort of transport, taking the bus. Another great reason to take the bus, isn't it?
You never know who you might meet.
But what was it that actually drew you to Buddhism and practicing the Dharma in the first place?
What was it like to get into it? Yeah. So it was a big shift. I didn't really think much about spiritual issues and concerns for a good part of my life. And then I just felt like something was missing. I had a lot of success as a death penalty lawyer. And although the death penalty in Illinois wasn't abolished until after I moved out here to California, I planted a lot of the seeds. I was the death penalty coordinator in the public defender office. So crossing my desk was 70% of the death penalty cases in Illinois. I think then it was the third largest state in the country. And we're talking about like hundreds of cases. So we had 165 people on death row when the death penalty was abolished, and another 35 people. The current death penalty. The death penalty at that time was abolished, and then another 30 people wound up on death row before finally Illinois decided to throw it out. So a lot of the systemic issues I put in there in different cases wound up, they wound up really helping out. But of course, so many people, literally dozens of people, had a huge impact on the death penalty. So all this stuff, good stuff was going on, but something was missing in my life. And I read a book about Buddhism by a Tibetan Buddhist and got interested, but it wasn't until I came out here almost 26 years ago that I started to practice. There weren't any centers that had, I was looking for overnight, a place to go for retreats. And there weren't any. Spirit Rock hadn't started yet, hadn't opened its residential retreat center. It opened in '98. So I would be teaching death penalty up in Northern California, and I would drive to the retreat center, listen to a talk by one of the better known teachers up there. And just, I don't know, it's a reason to be here. You can really see what's important and what's not. That's about really all I can say right now, except it's been profound, to really get into the Dharma. And then also later on to see the connection between that and the suffering of animals, which is obvious, but one has to see it and to feel it. Feeling it is the compassion that comes up through the practice. You don't have to be a Buddhist to feel compassion, but it's encouraged in the practice. So it kind of all came together: human rights, Buddhism, DVA.
No, that's a brilliant transition. And I totally get the whole overall, everything is just so complementary. Everything just goes hand in hand, or at least, that's what we feel as well. We've also discovered, for you, becoming part of this what is a global, massive spiritual movement with Buddhism. You could have, when you found out that, being vegan and not eating animals wasn't actually, an automatic part of living this way. You could have simply sort of fallen in line with what your teachers and other practitioners said and did, but instead you chose to speak out against that choice, or their choice to eat animals. And we were saying, we can't imagine a heated argument among Buddhists, but what was it like, speaking out? How difficult was it, challenging the actions of others in that faith?
Yeah, well, thanks for the question. It wasn't easy, as you're saying. And it wasn't not so much that I felt uncomfortable talking about it, although sometimes I did. I have another story to share in just a moment. But it was mostly that there weren't any places you could talk about it. So I would go to these retreats. I'd arrive, mid-afternoon. The retreat would start after dinner. And people would be registering and getting in their room and everything. And then we'd have a dinner, and then the retreat would start. The retreats are silent. So when do you talk about it? And then you break silence. And then so sometimes I'd start talking about it, but people didn't really want me to. You really need to talk not to the individual practitioners, but to the teachers. So as I spent more time on retreats and as I started teaching Dharma myself, I got to know better some of the better known Western teachers. And that's when I had conversations. I had one teacher, very famous teacher, who was written about in one of the books really wonderful book about Buddhism and animal rights and all. And in the middle of the retreat, I just decided I'm going to do it. So I had an extra copy of this book. It was actually Norm Phelps's book, Buddhism and Animal Ethics, called The Great Compassion. Norm was a good friend, and actually one of my mentors died about 5 years ago. And I gave this teacher the book because Norm was talking about him. And I said, here's the gift from me to you. And I told him just a little bit about it. And he said, oh, he talked about me. I hope, said the teacher, I hope he said good things about me. And then I said, the book is written from the point of view of the animals. And he said, oh.
Oh, no.
So, these are the way the conversations went for all this time. And so now we don't have so many direct conversations with teachers, but instead what we've done is we built up a network of Dharma teachers around the world, most of them being monastics. So lay teacher, I'm a lay teacher, there's lots of lay teachers in the US, is kind of unknown or unheard of in Asia. There are so many monastics, they don't need to go to the second line, to the lay teachers. So in Asia, we have no connections with lay teachers. I'm not sure there are any, maybe in some countries, I haven't heard about any. It's always with monastics, and we work closely with monastics. And in the US, it's both monastics and lay teachers. So this is the connection. And for a lot of people, it is difficult to talk. And I want to plug our Facebook page now, because we just started a series there where we are putting out the most important questions that we've heard through the years. Was the Buddha vegetarian? Do you have to be vegetarian to be a vegetarian/vegan? We use the word vegetarian because it brings more people into the conversation. And then our third one is vegetarian enough? Vegetarianism enough? That'll be probably in a couple of weeks. So we just started posting on that. We're trying to encourage a lot of back and forth on this. And then we're going to have some classes, some online classes in regard to this. And hope we can stimulate discussion about this.
Well, that's brilliant. We'll have to get and link that in the description of this video so people can go check it out, because I'll be very interested in seeing that discussion myself. Definitely. You mentioned earlier how you had two or three sort of teachers who sort of, I guess, were quite angry that you raised these points. Did you find any interesting ways they try to justify eating animals?
Yeah. I actually have an article. Thanks for asking that question too. The article is written from that point of view. What Western Dharma teachers, and I think it also applies to some extent to Asian Dharma teachers, who would all be monastic. Their most common reasons for not being vegan. So the first is, I didn't kill the animal myself, so no problem. And that's taking out of context one of the teachings of the Buddha. So the article, you could actually see more about it, but I'm of course answering your question after I tell you this, was published in Lion's Roar, which used to be the Shambhala Sun. And it's you can still see it online, and it's linked in our website. It's on the homepage there. You can see it. It was published about a year ago. They actually contacted me to see if DVA wanted to do an article. So so that starts from the teachings of the Buddha in the Pali Canon. I'm trying to not get too technical here for readers or listeners and viewers that may not have so much interest in the Dharma. Just a couple of things just to set the stage. There's basically two, and you guys know this, there's two schools of Buddhism, Mahayana and Theravada. So Mahayana is the largest by far, and it includes countries of China. So right there, you're talking about most of the Buddhists in the world, and also Korea, Japan, Malaysia, Singapore, Taiwan are some of the major, and Vietnam, of course, some of the major Buddhist countries. They're Mahayana. In the Mahayana scriptures or sutras, it is 100% clear There's no doubt at all. It is said explicitly again and again and again. The Buddha was vegetarian, and he expected his followers to be. And he would say things like, if there were no eater of flesh, there would be no destroyer of life. Okay. It's not quite as clear in Theravadan Buddhism. So, I mean, no Mahayana, and all the Mahayana monks in China, the Chinese, actually ethnic Chinese, Singapore, Malaysia, in the US, in China, in Taiwan, they're all, and Vietnam, are all vegetarian. Who knows what a few of them might do when they're not at the temple, but all the temples serve vegetarian food, and it's almost 100% vegan because there's very little dairy and eggs in most Asian cultures. So you're talking 98, 99% vegan. It's really, it's very close to 100% compassionate diet. Now, Theravadan is 3 countries. The one we're working in quite a bit, Sri Lanka. We have a big project there. Also Thailand and Myanmar, used to be called Burma. So, and we just opened a project in Thailand. We are just, it's really exciting. Hopefully I can tell you a bit more about it later if you're interested. So in these 3 countries, the Buddha said to his followers that when on alms round with a begging bowl, and maybe 1% of the monks in the world are eat off of alms. So there's a few places in the US, and there are places in Thailand, if you go out into the forest, and places in Myanmar. But most of the monks live close to the city, and most of them are the food is prepared by cooks, or it's brought in as dana, as a gift, generosity by the followers. So the time of the Buddha, the way they ate all the time was on alms rounds. They'd have a begging bowl, looks like I just had it here, I don't have it anymore, like a meditation bowl that you ring. And he said, if you're on alms rounds, so that was all the monks back then, and very small percentage now, then if you know something to be meat or animal flesh, you can eat the meat if the animal was not killed for you. But if you even suspect it might have been killed for you, you can't eat it. So what's the point of that? The point of that is he doesn't want any more animals to be killed. If the animal wasn't killed for you, if somebody is eating some and they share morsels with you, then no additional animal would die. So this is really, really important. So this has been this tiny exception has no application at all to lay people. It has no application at all to monks who are not on alms rounds, or nuns, of course, monastics in general, women and men. It has no application if they're not on alms rounds. But yet it is turned into, I can eat whatever I want, as long as I don't kill the animal myself. Also, the Buddha, another teaching says, if you should not kill or cause to be killed. That's the Dhammapada for those who are interested. It's on our website. So, that's, when we're eating food, somebody's going to be killing an animal for us. When we're eating animal flesh. So that's basically a summary. It's in the article. The article's called "Friends, Not Food," and it summarizes Buddhist teachings. And I've been looking at this now for about 20 years and studying all the sutras. That's pretty much a summary of what's there, and you can read more about it. And we have a film that talks about this directly. It was produced by Keegan Kuhn. You probably know Cowspiracy and What the Health, etc. And Keegan's worked with Leonardo DiCaprio, co-producing those 2 films. So DiCaprio was not involved in our film, but Keegan was. He produced it. And it's called Animals and the Buddha. It's on YouTube. We've had about 140,000 views, but people are showing it in temples around the world. So I'm sure over 1 million people have seen it. And it's with a lot of the top Buddhist leaders in the world talking about this issue. And a really important part is, was the animal killed for you? Well, if you go into a store and you buy a chicken, well, maybe not that chicken, but the next one is killed for you. I mean, who else is it killed for? It's not killed for the 3 of us, because we're not eating them.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for that summary.
Yeah. I think with the so I don't know if this is true, but certainly what I've heard in regard to, say, the Dalai Lama, which is, like I said, the main one that people question, why is a Dalai Lama not vegan? For him, I think I've heard him say that it goes back to these offerings, when he does his rounds in a place where, for example, maybe people are very poor or whatever. It's a big thing for them to give an offering, to give something to the, His Holiness. And so he can't be seen to refuse that. Is that right? Have I got that kind of thinking right?
Yeah, so I would say, my friend Norm Phelps actually had 3 audiences with the Dalai Lama to discuss this. I mean, my reading of this is, first of all, if someone brings you food, it's not true. It's polite to accept what's offered, but if that involves more killings of animals, it's not what the Buddha intended. I would say that quite respectfully to a great person like the Dalai Lama. But he's really coming around. You're right. He's not vegan, but he is a large percent of the time. And even his message has changed. And the Karmapa Lama, who's really, really well known, he has millions of followers, is 100% vegetarian. I don't know about vegan or not. And it's all on ethical compassion grounds and his understanding of the teachings of the Buddha.
So another thing I'd like to add to that was I really loved your summary of that whole practice. And I think it's something that's relevant to all of our viewers, regardless of what faith they follow, because even for me as a child, I was brought up with a Christian primary school. And the Christian teachings that I was taught was somebody's version of that one. And before them is somebody else's version. I think it goes for most religions and different teachings, is that it's always an interpretation. And so you can have a core principle which is misinterpreted as such a state. And as Jackie was saying with the Dalai Lama and stuff like that, I'd always, I guess, justify to myself as well when I'd seen people like having a go at, say, on social media, where they get all riled up and they're having a go about Buddhists and not being fully vegan. I always thought it was just the arms round thing and didn't understand that fully. So yeah, thank you so much for filling us more in on that, because now I feel I can truly understand it and make my own judgments about it.
Yeah, and just if I could just add one little point, and that is the reason why the Buddha allowed monks to eat animal flesh, if they don't even suspect, I mean, that's a really low bar. If you just have a hunch that the animal was killed for you, maybe a goat slaughtered in the back, maybe 2 goats instead of 1 because the monks are coming over. If you think that's possible, you cannot eat that. It couldn't be any clearer. That's called the Jivaka Sutta in the Pali Canon. So it's for Theravada Buddhists. But Mahayana sutras all over the place, the Buddha's vegetarian. So it's a challenge to try to justify that. And who knows the reason? But it seems pretty obvious. The Buddha didn't say this, but pretty obvious that it's a balance between the symbiotic relationship between monastics on the one hand and the lay community on the other. He wanted the monastics to be teaching the Dharma to the lay community, and the lay community to be supporting by their dana, by their contributions, food, medicine in those days, shelter when needed. And so how do you balance that? And this is the balance that he struck. It seems absolutely obvious that this is what happened. But the balance depends on not killing more animals. That's the whole reason for this. So if you're out there, it's used. It's very widespread. This exception, let's say, or this justification for eating animals. And then, if I could just mention quickly, another one is that vegetarianism, veganism has nothing to do with the Dharma. So to that I say, when you're biting into, chewing, and swallowing animal flesh or other animal products, you are intimately involved in that process. And there are a lot of, without going into more details on this, it's all in the article, the wise livelihood, one of the components of the Eightfold Path, is you can be, you're not supposed to raise animals for slaughter, even though you're not actually killing the animal. So the Buddha didn't draw the line at actually killing the animal. He drew the line in being part of the process. And certainly if you're eating animals and you're creating a market for animals and you're biting into, chewing and swallowing their bodies, you are involved in the process. So it seems pretty clear. That's not compassion. I wouldn't want anybody eating me.
Absolutely. And it makes perfect sense. And also, like you say, it's very easy to justify, which is what so many have been doing, finding ways to kind of skew those facts and those teachings and slacken them a bit. And it makes you wonder, with the whole hierarchy, for want of a better word, that information trickling down when the monastics and the lay people are going around, why can't they just say to these people, it's easy for us to say, I guess, from a vegan point of view, but why don't they just say to the people, to the communities, well, no, we don't accept this, or we don't eat this, wouldn't it be easier to just pass those teachings down? But it's
Yeah, so this is it. This is exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to connect with important, respected teachers. So, for example, and we have something called our advisory council. I think we have 10 people on it now. We have distinguished people. One of them is Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo, who's this amazing nun. She's English originally, and she spent 12 years in a cave in the upper Himalayas, right at the Tibetan border. And she's now the abbess of a large monastery, mostly Tibetan refugees, all nuns, of course. And she is on our advisory council. So when she comes to the U.S., I connect with her. We have some interviews, some snippets from my video interview on her Facebook page, and we talk about. She connects me with other compassionate nuns around the world, including one in Thailand. The Venerable Dhammananda is her name. She was mentioned by BBC as one of the 100 most influential women in the world. So I had a chance. She opened the door. Tenzin Palmo did, to me meeting this wonderful Thai nun, and she's helping us in Thailand. So this is what we're trying to do. The head of our project, the director of our project in Vietnam, the Venerable Thich Thanh Huan, is one of several monks in his country, Vietnam, that sets the agenda for the Buddhism in the country. There's about 60 million Buddhists there. He heads our project. So this is the idea, to gain the confidence and the trust, which takes time, of world Buddhist leaders in different countries and different cultures. It's different. It's really different. Buddhism is different in each culture, not surprisingly. And to do that, and then for them to be examples and to talk about it, and then we introduce them to other people. We provide materials that they can work with and encouragement to do this. And so this is the strategic plan for VVA, so that it's more difficult for people not to talk about this. We want people to talk about it. If you're a compassionate person, take a look at this, not by beating them over the head. That's not going to work, but by saying, have you thought about this? What about that? And so that they come to their own conclusion. But it's pretty hard to decide after looking at this that it's okay to be eating animals and animal products. So this is what we're doing. And we're having success everywhere. It's hard to measure it, but we know we're having success because of anecdotes that we hear.
Well, that's absolutely brilliant. I love hearing that for DVA. And it's been a common thing in this series, is talking about trying to create change, but you've got to start at the systematic level. You've got to start higher up, so then it trickles down. And it's so brilliant what you're doing in getting into these countries, because at the time of researching for this interview, good old Google was telling us, it's between 8 to 10% of the entire world's population is Buddhist, and that is just such a huge demographic. And if we can just start changing that, we've had previous people say, if we can get the world to, I think it's 11 to 15% to be vegan, then that's game over for the meat industry. That's going to be putting the right foot forward. So, yeah.
Great.
Sorry, I've lost my point.
I'm just,
Let me make a point then on your point, which, thank you for saying all that. And they say 8 to 10%, and you might find that. I actually think that's understated by quite a bit. So the numbers that we came up with, and we really don't know, is that there are approximately, the best we could determine, there's approximately 1 billion Buddhists in the world. In order to get to 1 billion, you have the great unknown is China. So there are 250 million, 300 million easy to find in China. But most people I've talked to, those that have had experience with in China and with Chinese Buddhism, say it's much greater than that. And and so that's how you go from 600 or 700 million to 1 billion. The people in China, because it hasn't always been comfortable to openly practice religion in the country. Now it's probably better than it was in the past. So people are a little bit reluctant to come out and to self-identify as Buddhists. But if the sources that we're talking to are accurate, there are over half a billion Chinese Buddhists, which drives the number over the billion mark worldwide. So someday we're getting into China too. We're starting to have some connections there, and right now we're waiting for opportunity. We're in Sri Lanka, Vietnam, and Thailand recently. And those projects are really going well. Each one's completely different. We have a different strategic plan in each place, but it's basically talking about this and using the monastic community and the leaders in those countries to get our message out. And we stay back and encourage them and support them in every way we can.
It's awesome. It's all about sowing those seeds, isn't it? However we can. And I think what Gareth was kind of aiming at was, maybe target audience is the wrong kind of word, but, DVA, you've got chapters all over the world, like you say, which is fantastic. And I think, why your chosen demographic, I suppose, is obviously, those who identify as Buddhist, although you don't have to be Buddhist to, make a difference in this way. But it's understanding that demographic, that target audience, and seeing where and how we can connect to the best of our abilities. So, it might seem a bit of an obvious question, but is that why you chose to focus on Buddhism in general? Because the numbers are just so huge?
Yeah, no, thanks for the question. That's a major reason that there are so many Buddhists in the world. 1. 2, the Buddhist message is as clear and unequivocal as it could be. It's not only the message about not killing and not being part of the killing chain, but it's also who is to be protected. What's the circle of compassion? Explicitly talks about sentient beings, and it's in the first precept, Panatipata Varamani Sikapadam Samadhiyami, which is do not kill a living being, or sentient being is perhaps the better translation. Sentient being is a being that can feel pain. So, who would deny that a chicken and a fish and a cow can feel pain? So that's a great start. What an amazing teaching. And the entire compassion and non-harming teachings revolve around that all living beings that can feel pain are entitled to our compassion and not to be harmed by us. So that's the start, that there are so many Buddhists in the world, and also that I identify as Buddhist. It's my spiritual path. And we put all those together, and that there was no other organization, international organization. There are organizations in each country, but they're just in the country. Like there's vegetarian and vegan groups in different countries. There's no other international organization of animal rights and Buddhism. We're the only one.
It's so amazing what you guys are doing, and really helping to create this more compassionate world through your movement. And I hope some of our viewers who are watching this, who maybe don't identify with a faith, they're not interested in religion or anything like that, I hope that they can still learn from this and look at what possible demographics that they have. Even if it's, say, chess players, they want better brain function, so go vegan for the better brain function and aim for that thing. I just find it so wonderful when we were researching you and finding out about this and just the huge scope of it. It's fantastic. Now, I understand one of the first sort of, we've talked about it already slightly. One of the first sort of areas your organization worked on was Sri Lanka, and also advocating for major animal rights bills out there. And it's a lot of the work that you do is focus on these Buddhist these Buddhist focused countries, a place where there's a cultural presence. Sorry, I'm just my brain's kind of half firing at the moment.
You're sitting on your couch and you're relaxing. So how about, why don't you ask me about our Sri Lanka project?
That's what I was trying to do.
But like you said, you're absolutely right. This is the first one we did. Sri Lanka is an island nation off the southeastern coast of India. It has a population of about 21 million people. 15 million of the 21 million identify as Buddhist, and kind of an even distribution of Muslim, Christian, and Hindu. So it's a country where Buddhism is protected in the Constitution explicitly. And it's a country, it has the longest uninterrupted Buddhist culture in the entire world. Thailand's not far behind, less than 100 years, but Sri Lanka is number one. And so I connected with someone that started in on our website, became a member. And of course, anyone can become a member. You don't have to be Buddhist to become a member. It's just that you are supporting what we're doing. This is it. We're targeting a large percentage, whether it's 7, 8, 9%, or 15%, as we think, of the world's population. So Sri Lanka is a really good place because, first of all, lots of people there speak English, which is very handy. Don't have to get interpreters. We go there and all. They have a absolutely uninterrupted Buddhist culture. And there's actually, in this Theravadan country, this country where lots of the tradition of Theravadan Buddhism, kind of, we can eat what we want if it's offered to us. So it's not Mahayana, but there are a lot of vegetarians in the country. It's so close to India, southern India, where there's a lot of vegetarianism. The Tamils came over from India several centuries ago, and many of them are vegetarian. So we find lots of really important monastics in that country, like the Venerable Sobhita, who's a huge supporter of us and an animal rights activist. So this was good. And then also on our board of directors is Bhante Sati. So Bhante Sati is a Sri Lankan American monk, and he's been here for 20 years. He runs a big retreat center in Minnesota, and he's on our board of directors. And he's also, along with me, the co-coordinator of our Sri Lanka project. What we do there is our main focus up till last month, and I'll tell you about the animal rights, animal welfare bill. Our main focus is working with young people in the country. We have an open invitation because we have political connections also, which I'll tell you about in a minute, which are wonderful. We work with the children at these Dhamma schools, Dhamma. So that's Dharma, but with the Pali Canon uses the word Dhamma, not Dharma. These Dhamma schools, these are Sunday schools, but they're not like Sunday schools in the West. Like I went to Sunday school, but you go for a couple hours. I mean, they actually have curriculum, they have textbooks. You go, when you're 5 or 6 years old, you continue until you're 16, and then you graduate. They have graduation and all. So it's really important. 80% of the Buddhist children in the country go through the Dhamma schools. So we have an open invitation to make presentations whenever we can, mutually acceptable times at these schools. We just made a presentation on Saturday, the first one since the curfew started for COVID-19. So this is what we're doing. We've done literally hundreds of these presentations. And it's a PowerPoint presentation. We have a group of 7 people that are doing this full time. Supervisor Shanika, she's the supervisor. 6 people that report to her, the regional coordinators. spread out in the larger population centers in Sri Lanka. And we go in there and we talk to the kids and their teachers and sometimes their parents. Of course, we want to bring the adults in since the kids aren't buying their own food or cooking their own food. And we talk about this. And it's acceptable in Sri Lanka to show graphic footage. And we don't do a lot of that, but they'll say, yeah, show them the film. And the kids just sit there. And I go, are you sure? Yeah. So we're doing that. We're invited to do that. This is the culture. It's not a Western culture. It's the culture of Sri Lanka. And this is making a huge impact. We also have, we've made 2 presentations at army posts to at least 1,200 soldiers each time. And they sit there and we ask at the beginning how many people are eating animals and animal products. And, pretty much everyone raises their hand. And after we're asking them how many are going to be doing this in the future, and very few people raise their hand. Now, I understand they want to please us and all, but we think we're making a big impact in these places. We're getting really good questions, and the speakers and the presenters here are speaking in Sinhala, the language of the Sri Lankan people. I went to one of the two presentations. We're in industry, we're talking to university kids, and this is what we're doing. But then one other thing I want to tell you about, because a month ago, we've shifted, we've actually added, we haven't taken away from these presentations. We're doing on an average 7 per weekend. So we have 7 people doing these. There is, as you mentioned, an animal rights, animal welfare bill, which speaks to confinement. It speaks to transportation, nothing about slaughter procedures, but that's a separate bill and we're going to address that also. And we just got a really nice grant, which is from a U.S. Operation Foundation, where we're going to be spending lots of time and some money in Sri Lanka promoting this. In the newspapers, in the but billboards are popular there. On television ads, radio ads. People still listen to radio in the country, et cetera, et cetera. And we have one of my close connections is the former Speaker of the Parliament, the Honorable Kuru Jayasuriya, who has spoken. Every time I'm there, we have a personal meeting, and he's like a big supporter of DVA, and he won't. His party just lost, so we're hoping he'll be the minority leader. And we also have connections with the party in power. And all these people I'm mentioning, these leaders, the former speaker and the president of the country is an ethical vegetarian, as is his entire family. So we're hopeful we can get this bill passed. And also it outlaws hunting in the country. It outlaws or prohibits fishing with live bait. Doesn't do anything for nets and all. But this is the significant stuff that's going on, and it makes a crime for harming animals. There was the last law in Sri Lanka was passed in 1907, and the fine is 20 rupees, which is about 11 U.S. cents, not dollars, 11 cents. And so now the penalties are 50,000 rupees to 100,000 rupees, and you can serve time in jail if you harm an animal. Of course, animals raised for slaughter are exempted from that because the original bill did not, but of course it's been added by the meat industry. But this bill does a lot. It's not perfect, but it does a lot, and we're going to get this passed to help as many animals as we can.
It's fantastic. I think, it's a great start and something a lot of countries could definitely learn from. So it's, so grateful for everything that you're doing. You're doing some majorly amazing things, and it's so great to have you in this series. I have to ask, along with Buddhism naturally goes the whole mindfulness. We've got Buddhism, compassion, and mindful. Being mindful, it's one of the sort of buzzwords that gets bandied about at the moment in current society. And personally, we believe that, being mindfulness is a practice that anyone can benefit hugely from, regardless of your faith. Can you explain for our viewers your definition of mindfulness? What does it mean to be mindful?
Yeah, so great. Thanks for asking. So mindfulness is knowing what your experience is in the present moment. So right now I'm aware that of hearing. I can hear your voice. I can see both of you. I'm aware of the sounds coming from my voice. I'm aware of my body, the weight of my body on this chair I'm sitting in my office. So that's what mindfulness is. It's very simple, just knowing your experience in the present moment, or being present is another way to say that. And so this, I'm happy you asked me this, because it really connects, as you both can see, with not harming animals, not supporting the harm of animals, and with everything we're trying to do in DVA. And it connects in this way. When we're mindful of where our food is coming from, when we're mindful of the process, we pay attention to that, we can see the suffering that is caused. And it's actually there's four noble truths, the key teaching of the Buddha. The first noble truth is the truth of suffering, which really means just to understand suffering, which really means just to come in contact with and to experience suffering firsthand. You might hear it, you might see it, it might happen to your body. So that's what the first noble truth is. So, just imagine what things are like for animals that go through this horrific processing words can't even describe. So that's what mindfulness is. And I think there's a huge need. And as you say also, it's not, well, the Buddha talked about this for sure. It has nothing, you can be mindful if you're not a Buddhist. It doesn't being a Buddhist to be mindful. It's a secular principle, which is at least in the Western world. It's popular in the Eastern world because of the Buddhist teachings. So this is really important. I have done teachings with different organizations in the U.S. For example, Mercy for Animals. I taught over there in their offices in Los Angeles, just up the road a bit, and also in different human rights organizations. That is to teach non-sectarian meditation and mindfulness. We've done that also. Myself and a friend of mine have taught at the big AR conference, the Animal Rights Conference in the U.S. The one this year has, of course, been canceled, but in 2017 and 2018. So we did that. There's a tremendous need and people really thirsty for teachings of meditation and mindfulness. Also, on not Mercy for Animals, but In Defense of Animals. I've given teachings there, but lots of people are doing that. Lots of people who are somewhat skilled at meditation. And for me, one of the keys to this is that we make better decisions when we're mindful. So it doesn't really do a lot for me when I'm talking to a teacher or to the manager of a retreat center, to raise my voice and tell them how stupid they are for serving animals and animal products. I mean, it's like the surest way for them to continue what they're doing. Instead, you have to have some way of connecting with people. I wasn't born veg. I had understanding earlier in my life. I wasn't born vegan. I had an understanding 16 years ago that I did not want to support suffering, and that by eating animal products, I was supporting suffering. So if we can understand where we came from, it's easier to relate to people. And the mindfulness gives us the space between what we're experiencing and then what we're going to do, between experience and decision making. So we can make better choices. So it's not about us. It's not about, I'm better because I'm vegan. It's about the animals that we want to save. And if we can keep that in mind and practice, as you both know, the Buddha's one of the 5 precepts is wise speech or right speech. So not to speak harshly. Instead, just to talk to people. And sometimes we have to raise our voice. I mean, this is part of it. Sometimes there has to be conflict. There's rarely change without conflict. Not physical conflict, but saying, I just don't think that's right. How can you justify that? This is wrong. What are you guys doing? I mean, do you see what? Okay. So this is all part of advocacy. But mindfulness is a big first step.
It's a great answer, and thank you for explaining. I mean, it's when we're first introduced to and made aware of what our species does to other sentient beings, it's understandable for us to become angry. And I think in a previous interview that I heard with you talking, you were saying how staying with that anger not only causes suffering to yourself. Suffering is such a huge part of Buddhism, but just understanding of suffering. When you stay angry, when you get angry, you not only cause suffering to yourself, because you're bringing you yourself as suffering, but you're also, if you get angry at other people, you're putting suffering onto them. But it's not of any benefit to the animals, is it, really, being angry?
It's not. So this, if I could, this is really important. And anger is the big one, right? Because as animal activists, we get angry, and there's so not to be, I shouldn't be angry. It's okay. But the way that the Buddha would talk about this is to embrace the feeling of anger, but guard the reaction. So for sure, you have to know you're angry, to your point, when angry, before anything good can happen. So just now, I'm not angry. Meanwhile, we're like enraged, the shoulders are tight, and the face is flushed, and then I'm going to let them have it now. So that's not good for animals. It's really not. So instead, it's understanding and feeling the anger in the mind, heart, and also the body. And then when we know we're angry, we can guard the response, because it doesn't do any good to put it out there. And of course, we're gonna make mistakes, because we're human. That's the way it is. But our goal should be to be able to communicate to people in a way that they can hear what we're saying. And we're planting the seeds. As frustrating as that is, we may talk to some people in Sri Lanka or Vietnam or Thailand and change them. On our Facebook Live presentations, on our presentations in person and live on video camera to the top temples or wats in that country. We make a difference because maybe they've heard something in the past. Maybe someone else planted a seed. And we go in there, we can take it another step further. And this is the way to do it. It takes a lot of patience. We're going to get angry. We're going to get frustrated. But for the animals, we have to be able to communicate with people in a way that they can hear us.
Thank you for watching this episode. If you would like to support our speaker, then follow the links provided in the description. If you're enjoying this content, then please subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave a like on some of our videos, and drop some comments with the things that you've been learning from this series. We really appreciate all your love and support, and we can't wait to bring you the next episode. Thank you.